My 32F father, 60s, has been married to Sasha, fake name, 40s, for almost a decade. I was already an adult when they started seeing each other, so I never had much of a relationship with her. That said, Sasha was nice and thoughtful, though a bit annoying at times, and I never had any problems with her. I now have a husband, 34M, and 2 kids, 9M and 4F. Sasha is very fond of my children, especially my daughter. That became very suffocating pretty quickly, so we started setting some boundaries. She never overstepped them. In January, my father and Sasha decided to go on a trip to Disney World, and invited us to join them. We decided to go to celebrate our son's 9th birthday. I quickly regretted coming along. Sasha spent the entire trip fussing over my daughter in ways that overstepped almost every boundary we'd set. Examples include, there were more instances. The final straw for me, however, was the last park day of the trip. We were at Magic Kingdom. My husband suffered a minor injury and I had to take him to the first aid station. The kids wanted to go to the Peter Pan ride, so my dad and Sasha offered to take them in the meantime. However, according to my father, the line was too long. So instead, Sasha suggested the Little Mermaid ride, assuring my kids Ursula wasn't on it. Actually, there's a pretty big Ursula animatronic there. My daughter was still sobbing and hugging her brother when we reunited. When we flew back home, I told my father that we'd no longer take our children on trips with Sasha due to her behavior. He got extremely angry. He said his wife loved my kids, thought about what they'd like to do at every moment of the trip, and that we should be grateful to have her in our lives. I lost my temper at that. I told him Sasha was a fucking creep, and that they should be grateful I was still okay with them even seeing my children after her actions during the trip. We ended up having a huge fight after that. It's been weeks since we returned home, and my father is still angry at me and my husband. Sasha has texted me a few times. She says she's sorry if she made me uncomfortable, but that she loves my kids and hoped to use the trip to spend more time with them. To be honest, I don't think I'm the here. But I do think I might have overreacted. I believe there's a chance Sasha's actions were motivated by love and she truly did have good intentions. Ida? Oop, my son doesn't like Sasha. I'm not sure why, but I think he gets that she favors my daughter. He's also very protective of his sister, so her discomfort could also be a reason. Update 1. As much as Sasha's behavior towards my children angered me and freaked me out, calling her a creep was the wrong reaction to have. That said, I think it's best for my family to distance itself from Sasha for the time being. And at the very least, my previous decision to avoid future trips with her based on the Disney trip is still the best course of action. Sasha's pushiness, tendency to override my and my husband's parenting and blatant favoritism towards my daughter were much worse when the kids were younger. After my daughter's birth, she began to focus too much attention on her and almost none on my son. I gave more examples of that in the comments on my original post. That's the reason we set boundaries in the first place. Her fixation on my daughter also bothers me. When we had the boundary conversation with my father and Sasha, she told us that she'd always wondered what having a daughter would be like. She'd also defined herself as child-free before, so I was never certain what to think of that. Either way, that reassured me and my husband that we were doing the best for our kids. Those boundaries had never been overstepped. Then we went on the Disney trip, and most of them were completely ignored. Many of you pointed out she might have gotten carried away, or that Disney is exciting and she wanted to make sure my kids had the best experience, etc. There are 2 things I'll say to that. The first is that whatever Sasha's reasons were, she still overstepped our boundaries. When we first set those, we told her that doing so would have consequences. Disney or not, I don't see a reason to make an exception. Secondly, she wasn't trying to ensure my kids had the best experience. She was pushing them to fulfill her fantasy of what their Disney trip should look like. She repeatedly ignored my children's wishes in favor of her own, despite them both being very clear about what they wanted and didn't want. Sasha also continually favored my daughter, including during my son's birthday, and fussed over her in ways that made her uncomfortable. And I still haven't forgiven the Little Mermaid thing. My daughter is a bit shy and takes a while to open up to most people, so knowing her trust was broken like that angers me in ways I can't describe. To put it in simpler terms, my children aren't props. And whoever treats them as such will, at the very least, be put in time out. I called my father and Sasha on Saturday. I apologized for calling Sasha a creep, but told them that we needed some time apart. They won't see my family until my younger sister's birthday in late April. If that goes well, they'll be invited to my daughter's 5th birthday party in May. After that, we'll slowly work on re-establishing contact. I also said that if they overstepped our boundaries again, the consequences would be more dire. My father didn't take it well. I don't care. Sasha sent me a text with more apologies, followed by a request to at least FaceTime my kids every now and then. I said no. And to those who said my controlling behavior ruined the trip, my kids had an amazing time at Disney World. They're both still talking about it. My daughter keeps asking us to put her pictures with the characters she met up and the wall, and my son says he had the best birthday ever. Update 2. Last time I posted here, I mentioned that my father and Sasha wouldn't see my children until my younger sister's birthday. The party took place last weekend, and we didn't attend. These 2 months of NC worked fine, but not great. My father respected my wishes, to my surprise, but Sasha kept trying to find ways to talk to my children. She'd call me under the guise of needing to ask me something, only to later say, "By the way, are the kids around? I want to say hi." Every time she tried that, I'd remind her of what I'd told her back in March. This must have happened almost a dozen times, which was enough for my husband and I to start debating on skipping the party. After speaking to our kids, we decided not to go. They both said they missed my father, but clearly didn't want to see Sasha. We thought about attending and just distancing them from her while there, but risking making our children uncomfortable wasn't worth it. My son even asked if we could see their aunt somewhere else, without Sasha around. My husband and I explained the situation to my sister. She was upset, but mostly because she hadn't seen the kids in a while. We all went to dinner at her favorite restaurant the day after her party. I also called my father and told him we wouldn't go to the birthday party. He reacted better than I expected, but we still had a short fight about it. He claimed that I had promised we'd let Sasha see the kids after 2 months, called me unfair and said he was entitled to have a relationship with his grandchildren. I immediately denied that. Though I tried to sugarcoat it at first, I eventually gave him the truth. My kids don't want to see his wife, and I won't force them to. My father and I had a long talk. I told him how much Sasha's actions at the Disney trip upset my children, as well as how uncomfortable me and my husband felt. I admitted I don't trust his wife at all, and I don't think Ver truly will. He said that while he still thought I was overreacting, he understood I wanted to protect my kids. My dad also told me about how these 2 months of NC were for them. Apparently, Sasha started talking about my kids, mostly my daughter, a lot more than usual. She'd mention things and places she thought they would like. My father was aware of one of the times she called me, but thought it was a one-time thing. She wanted to give my daughter a gift at my sister's birthday party. He said he didn't know why. At one point, she told him she wanted to plan another family vacation with the kids, even though I told them they're not traveling with Sasha anymore. Learning all of that just made me more certain that I can't trust this woman around my children. For now, I intend to remain LC with my father and NC with Sasha. My daughter told me she wanted her grandpa at her birthday party a few weeks from now, so I told him that he was invited, but Sasha wasn't. He agreed. To be honest, I don't trust my father after all of this. I'm allowing him to come because that party will take place at my home, which is easier for me to control. If he tries to bring Sasha, they'll both be kicked out, and it will take a long time for me to consider letting him near my kids again. My father hasn't told me how his wife is reacting to this. My sister told me that during her party, Sasha asked her to tell me she wanted to talk. I'm not reaching out to her, nor do I plan to respond if she attempts to contact me. Both me and my husband have blocked her. My children are doing great. They still talk about how much fun they had at Disney. My daughter's been saving money, putting coins in her piggy bank, for us to go back. On a completely different note, I'm pregnant again. This was completely unplanned. I always said I wanted 2 kids at most, and the third would have to be a huge accident, but my husband and I are ecstatic. I'm still in the first trimester, so not a lot of people know. We're brainstorming ways to tell our kids. Overall, I'm happy with my life right now. And as much as I wish this Sasha situation had never happened, I feel like a better parent after dealing with it. I have never been more confident in my abilities to protect my children than I am now. Update 3. I didn't really think he would. I'd made it very clear I wouldn't tolerate that, but I'd be lying if I said your comments didn't make me a little paranoid. Secondly, I've just entered my 3rd trimester, and the baby will be here in November. The kids are ecstatic. I'm having another girl, but my husband and I are not sharing the sex until she's born. This has nothing to do with our families, it's just something we've also done with our first 2. Everyone, including Sasha, knows I'm pregnant. We announced it a couple months ago. I had no problem with my father telling her, though he did ask if he could. I didn't hear much about her reaction, but according to my father, she was happy for me. My children still don't want to see Sasha, and I'm still not forcing them to. I've unblocked her and put her on mute instead, but she hasn't made any attempts to contact me. We've continued meeting my father without his wife, and I think it's been working out. My relationship with him isn't fantastic, but it's much better than it was earlier this year. Last week, I saw Sasha for the first time in months. My cousin threw a party at her place. My husband and I attended, as did my father and Sasha. I knew she'd be there, but since the kids weren't with us, son had a sleepover, daughter stayed with my mom, I didn't really have anything against seeing her. They arrived some time after we did. My husband and I spoke with them for a few minutes, and it was less awkward than I expected. Sasha asked me about the baby's sex, and I told her we weren't telling anyone, which, again, is what we've always done. About 20 minutes later, my father told me they had to go. I thought it was weird that they were leaving so soon, but I didn't think much of it at the time. He called me a few days ago, and we spoke for a long time. My father is difficult to talk to, so the following is what I gathered from the conversation. He said they left early because Sasha was holding back tears after she saw me. She was sobbing by the time they got to the car. They later had a discussion about it, and Sasha admitted she wanted kids. She married my dad knowing he didn't, but hoped he would change his mind. Apparently, when my son was born, Sasha tried to drop "I want one" hints to my father. He didn't notice it, so she gave up. According to my father, Sasha told him she loved my kids equally, but my daughter was special, because she always imagined herself as a girl mom. That's also the reason why she became such a suffocating presence when my daughter was a baby. When my husband and I started setting boundaries, Sasha realized she was overstepping and agreed to abide by them. To her credit, I think she did a mostly okay job back then, but the favoritism was still obvious enough that my son noticed it. The trip we took was a turning point because Sasha's dream of having a daughter included taking her to Disney World and having her do all the things she liked to do there when she was young. She told my father that having my daughter there was so exciting that she forgot everything I'd said about not overstepping. Sasha wanted a mother-daughter trip, and tried to use my child for it. Sasha said she regretted her actions during the Disney trip, but only because she lost access to my children due to them. And seeing me at the party, all pregnant and pretty, my father's words, not sure she actually said that, was what drove her over the edge. I remember reading some comments theorizing that this was what was going on, but I still didn't really expect this. My father said he was telling me all this because his wife wasn't doing well, and he'd understand if I wanted to keep my kids away from her. Didn't expect that, either. I don't know what the future of their relationship will be, and I don't think my father does either. All I know is that if Sasha still wants to have kids, it almost definitely will not be with my father. Before all this, I was pondering about my third child's future in relation to Sasha. Now, I sincerely don't want her to be a part of my baby's life. This isn't a final decision, but I've been speaking to my husband about it, and he agrees with me. I don't think she's a bad person. I got some baby stealer comments on my previous update, but I don't think that's what's happening here, either. But if the Disney trip proved anything to me, it's that Sasha is willing to be extremely selfish and disrespectful to get what she wants, even when my kids are involved. A couple months ago, my husband and I had a conversation with our son about the subject. He told us he dislikes Sasha for 2 reasons. She favors his sister and she doesn't listen to them. Honestly, that's all I need to know. Looking back at my own childhood, I feel like I was never allowed to have boundaries. I was always expected to put my schedules and preferences aside for others. It's important to me that my children don't go through that. If they don't want to see Sasha, they don't have to. I think that's all I want to say here. I'm doing well. I actually got some great news from work recently. My kids are thriving, and I'm excited to meet my third baby. Now on to second story. Sister-in-law stole our fake baby names by sneaking into our nursery, unknowingly naming her son one of them, and now feels trapped. So I 33F have been married to my husband Kevin, 35 male, for 5 years. We have a 3-year-old daughter and I'm currently pregnant with twins, M and F. My Bill Terrence, 38M, has been married to his wife Jess, 39F, for 7 years. Jess and I are total opposites. Jess is an extrovert. She's kind of loud, boisterous and some would even say abrasive. I am an introvert. I'm not quiet or shy, but I am reserved. I'm also very observant. The first time I met Jess, I told Kevin that we would be like oil and water. We have never been overtly hostile towards each other but also have never gone out of our way to bond. Unfortunately, Terrence and Jess had fertility issues for several years before finally having their son a couple weeks ago. Prior to this, Jess was very odd towards us when I was pregnant with our daughter. The best way to describe it is hot and cold. One minute she pretended like she didn't care while we were talking about it at family gatherings, the next she was volunteering to throw the baby shower. I gave a firm no to that. We both assumed the behavior was because of their fertility issues and didn't think too much of it. But the strangest thing she did was almost demand to know what we were naming our daughter before we announced it. She asked us constantly after our gender reveal and got visibly annoyed when we just laughed her off and said it was a secret. We couldn't understand why the hell she cared so much as she was not expecting it this time. Regardless, we didn't share the name with anyone. When our daughter was born and her name was finally announced, Jess was kind of obsessed with it? I'd how to explain it. She just kept going on and on about how beautiful and unique it was. To this day she comments about how different it is. The name we chose is a pretty common Welsh name which wouldn't be all that different except for the fact that we are African American lol. I've always gravitated towards names from different regions and found and fell in love with the name years ago and never shared it with anyone prior to Kevin. Fast forward to both of us being pregnant at the same time. Jess' odd behavior continued towards me but this time it was more blatant. Snarky comments under the guise of jokes about how big I was going to get with 2 babies and that my body would never snap back like it did after our daughter. She even accused us of getting pregnant on purpose after she announced her own pregnancy even though the whole family knew we were actively trying and at the time of her announcement, I was already a few weeks along and didn't know. One thing about me, introvert or not, I'm no pushover and will stand up for myself. But, I chose to ignore Jess because I knew that would get to her more than confronting her would since she seems to thrive off drama. Jess was obviously much further along than we are, however, we did have our gender reveal prior to Jess giving birth. And right on cue, the baby name interrogation started again. Because they decided not to find out the gender of their baby in advance, Jess kept hounding us for both of the names we had already picked out. But again, we declined to answer. After days of this, I got annoyed and asked Kevin if he thought the reason for her insistence was so she could use the name first since she was due first. He kinda chuckled until he realized I was serious and said he didn't think so but that anything was possible. So I said, let's test it. We were due to host my Phil's birthday at our house a couple weeks later and I decided to leave something in the unfinished nursery with a girl and boy name on it and see if Jess went snooping. Because Kevin thought it was silly, he said he would give me $20 if she did it. So I went onto some site where you can order custom name wall decals and put in the names Aria Rose and Sebastian Ali. These are names that we like but aren't remotely close to what we chose. This will also be our last pregnancy, so even if Jess did use them, we wouldn't care. I didn't complete the order. I got to the final page and then printed it out and hid it in a dresser drawer in the nursery. The party goes off, but because we were busy hosting, we never noticed if Jess disappeared for any extended period of time. When I went into the nursery the next morning, nothing was out of place and the order sheet was still in the exact location. So we both just went Velp and forgot about it. I did however notice that Jess never asked us about the names again. Then Jess gives birth. We went to the hospital to give our congrats. When we go in and see the baby, I asked what his name was and man, I cannot properly explain the shit-eating grin that came over Jess' face as she says Sebastian Ali. I mean, she was really proud of herself and honestly, it's the most vindictive I have ever seen her look in the years I've known her. But instead of reacting how she was expecting, I put on a performance like I had graduated from Juilliard. That's such a great name. He's so cute, look at his whittle face. Oh, I just love him so much. Welcome to the world, Sebastian. And he is gonna spoil you rotten. I mean, I am laying it on thick without an ounce of bother. The range of emotions on Jess' face went from shock to confusion to rage in a span of maybe 17 seconds. Meanwhile, my husband is holding in the laugh of the century. We later say our goodbyes and he gives me a 20 in the elevator while almost crying laughing. All I could say was, like I thought. This was 2 weeks ago and we haven't seen them since because we wanted to give them time to settle in with the new baby. I have heard from my mill that Jess doesn't seem as thrilled about motherhood as she thought she would be considering how long it took them to conceive, but said it might just be baby blues. Obviously, I think she's just disappointed that her petty move didn't have the desired effect on us. I did share this with my sister and while she laughed initially, she did say it was kind of an move. Update 1. Jess didn't break into my house to push me down the steps and steal my kid lol. I did get some additional info though that I can pass along. Before I get to that, I want to give a little context about my relationship with Jess to explain why I did what I did. Feel free to skip past it. To put it plainly, J.S. and I have been in a one-sided beef since the day Kevin and I started dating. I give her zero thought if I don't have to and yet, I live rent-free in her mind. Based on snide comments she's made over the years, the reason why is jealousy. Kevin and I dated for only a year before we got engaged. We then were married within 6 months of that engagement. We had an actual wedding with a ceremony and reception, went on a honeymoon, bought a house in the burbs and got pregnant in rapid succession. Both of us have good careers and are financially stable. Phil and Gmeal all adore me. There is a churchy reason behind this that I will spare you on. Jess and Terrence did not have a similar path. They had been on and off since they were 19-20 with Terrence never really wanting to commit. During one of their breaks, Terrence got a FWB pregnant and now has an 11-year son. This has always been a sore subject with Jess due to her fertility struggles, fibroids. When they finally got back together, she pressed him for marriage until he relented and gave her a shut-up ring. They went to the courthouse on a random Tuesday, then had dinner at Red Lobster afterwards and went back to work the next day. Not trying to be shady, just relaying the facts. They now live in a 2-BR apartment in a call city while working hourly jobs. They aren't minimum wage or anything, but constantly need OT to make ends meet. This has led her to resent me over the years. She thinks everything has come easily to me and has let that fester. There was a time a few years ago at a gathering where she got drunk and got into an argument with Terrence. I think her attitude that night stemmed from seeing me with my infant daughter. To hurt him, she blurted out that she married the wrong brother. Everyone was shocked. I wasn't. She just said the quiet part out loud and revealed what I already knew. So I poked her a little and said, really, which one? That's kinda gross since both were minors when you met them. Context. Kevin and Terrence also have a younger brother, Tim, 28. Boy, did she fly off the handle after that lol. To this day she claims to have no memory of that night. Anyway, now I know there is a new reason why she resents me. The update, like I said, nothing has really happened since I last posted. I haven't seen or heard from Jess since that day in the hospital. Terrence also hasn't communicated much with Kevin other than sports talk. However, my mill has been with them almost every day. She came over yesterday to go over some last-minute things for our baby shower that we are having the Saturday after Halloween. I am not due till late January, but with the holidays and twins tending to arrive early, we just wanted to get it out of the way. Anyway, after finalizing some things, I asked Mill how Terrence and Jess were doing. She sighed and leaned back in her chair and said, girl, it's a mess. She goes on a long word vomit that I will have to summarize. Basically, they've been at it since before the baby was born. When they were discussing names, Jess' list only consisted of girl names. When Terrence asked what if it's a boy, Jess was adamant that it wouldn't be, but if it was, they would just use Terrence Jr. This caused an argument because Terrence's 11-yo is not named after him and it would be petty to name the second son a Junior. Unbeknownst to me, Jess was having severe anxiety over not the name, but the gender of their baby. So much so that she refused to find out early because she was afraid of disappointment and she wanted to enjoy her pregnancy believing she was having a girl. She really wanted a girl. I mean really wanted a girl. This goes back to Mill emo. Mill is the only girl of 4 brothers. She had 3 boys. 2 of her 3 boys, Tim has a 6-yo, have boys. Then my daughter came along. Mill actually broke down in tears at our gender reveal. Since the day she was born, Mill has become a little obsessed with her lol. Not in a Jamil way. She knows and respects boundaries, but the whole family is aware that my daughter is Mill's favorite person in the world. I think Jess thought that by having a girl, she would get that same attention and affection from Mill as she has never been Jess' biggest fan. When that didn't happen, something short-circuited in her head. Mill's words, not mine. Before we arrived at the hospital that day, they were still fighting over a name. So I guess when I showed up she just blurted it out. While I still think it was to hurt me, it seems like it was also because she didn't allow herself to think of anything else because she didn't want a boy. I said in the first post how I noticed her expression, however I completely failed to notice Terrence's. He was pissed. Jess had never mentioned that name to him prior and he had no clue where it even came from. He also hated it. He refused to sign off on that and they left the hospital without a name. In our state, you only have 7 days from birth to register a name. She eventually told Terrence to pick the name himself and that she didn't care anymore. So he did. He swapped out Sebastian for Jordan but kept Ali. Yes, after Michael and Muhammad lol, according to Mill, since they've been home, Jess has shut down emotionally. She's been doing all the motherly things, but there's a disconnect there. Mill said she finally broke down to her a few nights ago that she'll likely never have a daughter due to her age and what it took to get pregnant in the first place. I think that will bring them closer together since Mill never got the daughter she wanted either. I also felt bad hearing that because regardless of how I feel about her as a person, I do have a heart and would never want to punch down on her if she's in the throes of PPD. Jess still hasn't admitted to snooping. So I haven't admitted to setting her up. A few comments said I should never confess, but I think I will at some point. Mainly because I don't care lol. I am more than willing to burn a bridge while I'm still standing on it. But now simply isn't the time. So that's it. That's the lackluster update. Jess is invited to my baby shower so I might be back in a couple weeks depending on how that shakes out. Oop, I am mostly worried about my nephew and all of this but I really do think Mill will step up and help. I don't know if I can or what that would even look like. We've never been close before this and likely never will. The best way for me to help is actually to just leave her be. Every mama deserves a village and had she shown me the slightest bit of kindness in all these years, I would be a part of that. Yet here we are. Oop, I read my fair share of Reddit stories and they always go off the rails so I thought this would be boring in comparison lol. However, I also recognize that most of those stories are fake. Oop, I think if no one asks then I won't tell, but if confronted with it, I'm not going to lie. Oop, Jess. If she ever asks me about the names and why I didn't use them, I'll tell her. But for her to do that, she would first have to admit her part. So it's unlikely.